something within us is constantly pushing, nudging to grow. And as long as we move in that direction of growth, life is worthwhile. When we stop growing, when we are unable to grow, everything becomes boring and meaningless. I'll keep this as a reference when we review the big picture of what we have been studying, the 12 powers or attributes of the manifesting movement. Recall, we spoke yesterday of the symbol, the divine energy that pours into the world to manifest the entire universe is also the same energy that pours into us individually and into us collectively as a team, as a company, as a community, as a society, as a nation, as Earth, and of course the universe. And that energy opening out to manifest has a fourfold aspect we spoke of: knowledge, power, harmony, perfection in detail. And which, as it moves to manifest, has 12 attributes which make for a complete and effective manifestation. And the beauty of this template is that you can observe it externally in the whole universe is working. You can observe it externally in a company's processes and analyze on the basis of this where you have flaws, where things are not working out, what is the correction needed. But you can also turn it inward and observe what makes your life and your work effective and complete, giving you the deepest and most complete satisfaction also. And as an internal tool also, one can observe and see where are the gaps, what are the corrective movements needed. We saw these 12 attributes in 3, let's say, groups. The first group, which we described as necessary as a base for any growth or evolution, which we covered yesterday in some detail. Sincerity, which means bringing all of ourselves around one center, unifying, organizing, and the highest center, raising everything to align with the highest center. Second, humility, to recognize that without the support of this pouring divine energy, we are nothing. We're just a focal point, an instrument, the pipe through which the water goes. What's the use of your entire water piping or the electrical wiring if the juice is not flowing, if the water doesn't flow, if the electricity doesn't flow? Pointless. We are nothing without that. And to become conscious of that and to consciously become a vehicle for that, to give ourselves to it in humility. And the third, the gratitude with which we give ourselves, which makes effective that action, opens the way for its free flow. Fourth, the perseverance. Because all 3 initially require an effort of alignment, an effort of opening, an effort in the action for which you're working. And so the perseverance is what allows you to persist, overcome in spite of a resistance, and prepares the way now for the second group of 4 attributes which make possible for the forward movement. This was the base, we said, necessary for anything, any growth. What makes for the growth itself and the fulfillment. The 4 that we will explore today: aspiration, receptivity, progress, courage. These build on top of the previous 3, and you will see there are deep, intimate connections from the previous 3 to these, almost as if an extension to move forward. And finally, the last 4, which we will see tomorrow, are those which put this entire forward movement in relation with the universe, because it's not taking place in isolation. Not only in the effort there is a relation, but in the intention of the effort, the goal, the project's completeness that you seek, there is the relation to the universe, always. And those are goodness, generosity, equanimity, peace. So for today, we are focusing on aspiration. Having set a base on which this forward movement is possible, what is it that drives the forward movement? In the the way modern management is taught, you are taught it is desire, dissatisfaction. You want something which you lack, and so you make a forward effort, which is true, which is good. Desire is not bad, it's necessary. Without it, nothing would move. Look at nature, everything is struggling with desire. Some lack, some dissatisfaction, and the recognition that something is possible which you lack. If you didn't see that, well, desire couldn't exist. If you were in your own little shell, let's say you grew up as a baby inside a closed room, not knowing there is a world, what would you desire? You wouldn't know there is something worth desiring. Of course, inside we know, and so we will still have a dissatisfaction, but for what, I don't know. But when you see something and you know it's not there in you, that's when the desire comes. Desire, in fact, is the attempt instinctively to reach out to completeness, to reach out to fulfillment. Except the form in which it first emerges is instinctive, blind, not knowing what it's trying to do, and extremely narrow, because it aims at a very narrow, immediate satisfaction. And the problem with that is that extremely narrow desire, having hit its object, realizes, I still haven't got what I needed, the satisfaction. So you've all experienced this. I want. Let's say as a child, I want my lollipop, my balloon. Eventually, when I get it, a little bit of excitement for a while, and then, okay, now what? I wanted this fancy dress. I knew it would make me so happy and complete for my birthday. I wear this fancy dress, and then, having showed off and had the satisfaction of showing off, it goes into my closet, and I need the next one. Why? Because the immediate impulse only sought for a short-term, partial, not realizing that it's not the whole. It thought it was the whole, it failed. On the other hand, if it was not satisfied, oh, I'm so disappointed, I so looked forward to it, and now I've lost it for good. So both ways you end up with a disappointment, because what you sought for didn't have what you expected it to have. In fact, as you explore this more deeply, you realize the error of desire is actually to catch form. I'm going to take an example here which is so common in modern society. There are people who will say, I wish I had a companion, I wish I can get married, and then I will be happy. You get married and then you have the whole complexity of problems you didn't know came with it. It's not the marriage. It's not the form of the contract or the relation set or the place it put you in society. It was something which you felt lacking in a relationship, which filling would have made you feel worthwhile or complete. And it was not to do with the form. It was different from the form. It filled the form, but it could as easily leak out of the form. The form is a container. The marriage is a container. If that juice fills the form, I'm satisfied, I'm happy, I'm content, I'm fulfilled. If there's a hole somewhere and the juice leaks out, I got married, I was happy for a while, but now I don't know what's happened. And now we have lots of books in the self-help section which teach you, bring the spark back into your marriage. We don't know where it's gone. You spend a lot of money trying to get it back. But where was it to begin with? Where did it leak out? You did not aim for the spark itself, you aimed for the form which you thought contained the spark. You aimed for the dress which you thought will give you satisfaction. But it was not the dress, it was something else in the dress which you were really seeking. And if you begin to analyze more deeply, you recognize that the urge of desire is always failing because it grabs the form and the juice fades out. You grab the water and it leaks out of your fingers. You grab the sand, you get only a fistful when you wanted the entire ocean. As we look into ourselves, we realize also the desire has another problem. It's fickle, it's changing. Today I desire this, tomorrow I say, I wish I had asked for the other thing. And sometimes we look back, after 5 years, we say, I wish I had not succumbed to my desire, I regret. The problem of desire is it doesn't even know what's right. And with maturity, one of the things we learn is not to succumb to the immediate desire, but to look at the larger picture and accept the deeper or long-term desire, long-term satisfaction. It's something which used to be taught in the old days to children in the Indian culture. We have two words for it coming from the Upanishads, Shreya and Priya. Shreya is that which is greater, which is lasting, which is long-term satisfaction. Priya, which is that which is immediate, short-term, quick fix satisfaction. Recognize, distinguish between the two and make a choice. And you teach that to children early on. You don't say, do this. You say, well, observe and make a choice. See where each choice leads you to. And we have to do that today as adults. And where possible, you will find the long-term satisfaction being more meaningful. And you will experiment, you will make mistakes. But if you observe very quickly, you will make that correction. And you notice the long-term satisfaction is not superficial, it's not momentary desire. It's a deeper desire, something which lasts. My fickle desire is, oh, this delicious sweet I need to grab, eat until I'm sick. The long-term picture says, oh yeah, you know what, I'm diabetic, I know this makes me sick. Let me taste a little bit, but balance it out with fibers. Have the satisfaction, but there's something else, a deeper satisfaction which is of remaining healthy. We make choices, we make compromises, but we have this long-term vision always. And where does that come from? From a deeper poise, which is more lasting. What if you could go deeper still? You notice the deeper you go, the more lasting, the more fulfilling, the more worthwhile. Not only the effort, but the outcome. Where is the source of it? If you go all the way in, you realize it's no more a kind of personal desire. The word desire kind of fails, or you have to replace it with a capital D to distinguish from the lesser form of desire. And to know, to grow in knowledge is so intrinsic to my being that anything I do will be always first beginning with the knowledge aspect and the rest will grow. To the adventurer, to the natural leader, it will be the impulse of power, energy, action, adventure, overcoming obstacles. And anything he does, he must have that. Now put an accountant, put this man in the place of an accountant. What will he do? The boring stuff is not interesting. I need to break barriers. Let's look for problems. Let's get into a head-on collision with the source of the problems. Now I'm doing something. You see what happens there? And it's useful, but it may not be the best role in the position of an accountant. I've seen this happen in people. They look for problems to overcome because that's their nature. And if you don't give them a problem, they'll find one, they'll create one, and they will put all their energies in overcoming it, forgetting their larger, immediate objective or role assigned. If you put such a person, let's say the parent said, you must be a doctor, throw him into that role, what will he do? He'll grow, he'll pass his exam somehow as a challenge, and then as a doctor, it's boring. I'm just looking after people, helping them, caring for them. I need to build a hospital. I need to do something. I need to get into social service. Something where you push barriers, lead, not be one-on-one with patients. That's boring. A true doctor of that kind should be the one who loves to serve, the Mahasaraswati aspect. If you took Mahalakshmi aspect, the organizational character, put him into a doctor, well, he will build a good business, but he will himself not be the one serving. He will organize doctors and make them serve. And he will look at the growth, profits, etc. The first type, the knowledge man, you make him a doctor, what will he do? After a while, you know what, I observe these patterns. This particular disease happens more often here. He will get into research. That's what will give him the satisfaction. So as we look deep into ourselves, we find certain innate yearnings which are intrinsic, even identified with our existence. And from there, when something emerges, anything which aligns with it, and the form is not important, anything which aligns with it gives you satisfaction. It is the most deep, but the most wide and free of form in what it can do and the form of and the satisfaction it can give, and its lasting character. As long as you're following that, even if you fail, not once but again and again and again, the very fact that you're flowing along what gives you satisfaction keeps you going the same way. Interesting. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna points out it's more valuable to have failed in your natural line of development than to have succeeded in a line of development which is not natural to you. You can make an imitation of somebody else's career which doesn't give you satisfaction. You may be successful in it, but you're moving from dissatisfaction to dissatisfaction. Now this origin, this foundation, this source within you, what it leads you to is what we call the aspiration. Essentially, it's the forward movement, the yearning which comes from your inmost, deepest existence, your being, your soul. Because it's what you came with in the line of development you chose when you took birth. And anything which aligns with it, you will find in it the greatest strength to persist. You will find in it the greatest illumination because you know what is needed, the knowledge to guide. And you'll find in it the greatest satisfaction in doing, even whether you fail or succeed, it wouldn't matter because you will have satisfaction. And so any forward movement leans upon this aspiration. Desires, more superficial ones particularly, can momentarily reflect the aspiration. And to that extent, they may serve to give you momentary partial satisfaction. And that's why desires are so valuable. They reflect and serve as superficial drives. But increasingly, as we become conscious, if we align to the deepest essential aspiration, we have something which is more valuable than the superficial desire as a motive force. And so, the first attribute in this set that we will consider is this aspiration. Now, the aspiration is another strange or valuable feature that when you align yourself to it, because its source is also so deep, the deep source, the deep intent and direction of the aspiration is also linked to the larger oneness of the universe. Because it's coming from there, your soul is a part of that deeper oneness. And so when you flow with it, you are automatically aligned to the things happening in the larger universe. Or if we look at it more subjectively, it feels as if when you are aligned to it, things around you align themselves to you. Interesting. And the mother puts it in this way. If you are in a state of conscious aspiration and very sincere, well, everything around you will be arranged in order to help in your aspiration. Interesting. When you're not aligned to it, you find yourself unnecessarily fighting positions which are all pointless. When you're aligned to it, everything seems as if to align to help you. And she says, help you in your aspiration whether directly or indirectly. That is, either to make you progress, put you in touch with something new, or to eliminate from your nature something that has to disappear. This is something quite remarkable. If you are truly in a state of intensity of aspiration, there is not a circumstances which does not come to help you to realize this aspiration. Everything comes, everything, as though there were a perfect and absolute consciousness organizing around you all things. Very interesting idea. So not only you have the satisfaction, you have the help of everything coming. Or so it seems. In fact, it is. There's another aspect to this aspiration, of which the way it works, the way you can utilize its full power. She says, when you're working, when you commit yourself to an effort, there's a part which tends to always to observe and either criticize or praise and say, this is so good, I'm doing so well. It splits your consciousness. It splits the integrity of the internal state, and it even distracts. By separating and even praising, we saw this yesterday briefly, it covers the natural flow, the laminar flow, the state of zone. Okay? And the ideal state of the zone is when you forget yourself, you are one with what you do. And when you have the aspiration in this way concentrated and you forget yourself, you become one with the aspiration, something magical happens. And this she describes like this. One should be so sincere in his aspiration that he doesn't even know he is aspiring. That is, he becomes the aspiration itself. 1 minute of this, and you can prepare years of realization. When one is no longer a self-regarding being, an ego looking at itself acting, when one becomes the action itself, above all, in the aspiration, this truly is good. When there is no longer a person who is aspiring, when it is an aspiration which leaps up with a fully concentrated impulsion, then truly it goes very far. Otherwise, there is always mixed up in it a little vanity, a little self-complacency, a little self-pity also, all kinds of little things which come and spoil everything. You can see how this is the base of any forward, lasting movement. And if you have this as the foundation of your forward movement, it is certain. One way or other, it is certain. This aspiration, you see, you recognize, is what has led our whole journey. Because it came from the inmost soul, it's the journey which has also spanned across lives. In the Veda, we invoke this aspiration in its form that is Agni. The divine will seated inside things, in the very heart of matter, which has been building and organizing forms and pushing forward evolution as a universal movement, but also within us individualized, coming into its own in us as an individualized focus. But its role is to push forward evolution. And its consciousness, being eternal, knows the full journey. It's the knower of births, across births. And the invocation from the surface I, which does not know that true source within, the invocation is, O Agni, lead us away from the crooked path. Make the path become straight. There's a deep truth here. All of our life, everything we do, remember we're driven by desire and the need for satisfaction and growth. All of our life is full of little pieces, zigzagging. But through the zigzags, this little thing is nudging forward. When you get bored, it drops this form, you move to the next form of desire, but it's a zigzag path. Through everything you learn, through everything you grow a tiny bit. But when you align yourself consciously with this aspiration, the zigzagging becomes less wasted time, and you become more and more straight in your journey. You look back at your life, there was always a period where you were zigzagging, wandering, looking for, and then there's a point where you become sufficiently aware of what it is you seek, and after that the whole journey becomes more straight. If you could look back thus across lives, going back a few thousand years, you would find this gigantic zigzagging through so many forms, so many bodies, so many relations, so many cultures, languages, values across time and world. All of them preparing, adding a little bit. But then comes this point where you awake and you say, oh, this is what it is all for. And after that, the journey becomes more direct, more rapid. And it's all good. All the zigzag gives you the broadness. But once you have completed the widening movement, as far as you need, there comes the narrowing of the focus. So there's a very interesting pattern we see here. And the mother represented in a picture when her great-grandson came to her as a young teenager, living in the ashram, hearing this word yoga all the time, but not understanding what it was all about. He came to her and said, Mother, great-grandma, can you tell me, what is this yoga thing? So mother takes a sheet of paper to explain to a young child. She draws a little circle at the bottom, a little dot, and on top a tiny square, and then draws a zigzag pattern, slowly widening, until it widens halfway up the paper, and then again begins to narrow. And she explains, this is the normal journey of life. Through the zigzagging, you gradually grow, widen, and then there is this focusing and redirecting of your energies to something more specific. And you get there. That's the normal life. And then she draws a straight line from the circle to the square. And she says, this is yoga. Very simple, very direct. The more you become conscious, the more you align, the more straight the path becomes. That's yoga. You're doing exactly the same thing, learning exactly the same things, growing the same way, much faster, and getting there with greater satisfaction. So this aspiration is your first driver to fulfillment and to full self-actualization. The second power or attribute which makes for this forward movement effective and complete is receptivity. Now, receptivity is something which makes you capable of receiving what is being given to you as a help. Where is this help coming from? You can step back from the narrow personal experience and look at the big picture. The moment you start making an effort to move forward, to realize something deeply needed, what happens to the environment? Everything flows to assist, remember. That means it's helping you. But what's helping you? Everything. It's a broad help, enormous, wide help that's coming your way. You can't take it. You can't take more than what you're capable of. You don't have enough bandwidth to handle all the things which come your way. You don't have enough energy to make use of all the opportunities. You don't have enough capacity in your knowledge to handle the enormous amount of data that comes your way to assist. You can't handle the number of relationships which are required to make for the full. It's beyond your capacity. You always narrow down to hold or receive what you are capable of. So, how much can you hold? Finite, limited capacity. Even energy. Briefly, I touched upon this yesterday when I said that I couldn't handle that inrush when I made that shift in my awareness to draw the people or the situation there. I couldn't handle. Why? Because that's your capacity. In any management position, the higher up you go, the wider is the need of capacity. Energetically, but also in knowledge, in ability to handle people. When you look at a person, in the first go, you can sense what is their width or narrowness. And you will place them in the overall hierarchy. This guy will only go so far. That guy has so much, he can go all the way if he's able to discipline his vitality. But the vitality is something you have to struggle with. I remember once, it was in Bombay, I had gone to, somehow circumstances had arranged, I met with somebody who was one of the biggest traders on the stock market. One of the biggest, most successful, making enormous deals every day. Famous guy. I was in this office and on the board was written something. If you cannot dedicate your entire life, day and night, to trading, don't get into it. That was the sum of it. And he had it for his employees. And you could see the huge vitality that he had, and also the coarseness of his vitality. Abusive, blowing people off. But the entire office was in his grip of energy. And you could say, this man will be successful. It doesn't matter how he behaves. He will throw off people. He will lose lots of good people. But he doesn't care. With the sheer brute force of his vitality, he can seize the market forces, play at them, because he has that capacity. He'll be rich. You could have said this early on. Not exactly your ideal, perhaps, but still. You see the importance of that gigantic capacity of energy. There are equally people I've seen who are at the top of a business who do not have that gigantic vitality. They have a relatively fragile vitality, but some wider mind. But they have people working with them who have a strong vital, who are able to handle that aspect. But they experience pushback from these people. They can't themselves push these people. But if they have a loyalty, a base of loyalty, it works. The point I'm getting at is you can only accomplish so much as you're able to receive or contain in yourself for all these things: knowledge, power, holding in harmony all the relationships, and also execution in the detail and the intricacies and complexities which make for things to be perfect. And so the necessity for the widening of your capacity to hold and to receive is the basis of this power, receptivity. If your bowl is small, the ocean is waiting to pour in, well, you can only contain so much. And again, it's a skill, a power which can be developed. You have something naturally, but you can develop it. And how would you do that? From a yogic perspective, the easiest way is to open in your heart and mind to the relationship of that which is the wideness, which is the divine presence. Open your mind to the vastness of the divine presence and the knowledge which it holds, the light which comes with it. Open your heart to the love and the self-giving. The best way to grow in receptivity is to give yourself rather than try to take. Again, I give you the analogy of the bowl. A bowl can grab water from the ocean and pour out. Grab and pour out. You see how it works? How much can you take in? One little cupful at each time. That's about all you can do. How can the bowl contain the ocean? If it leaps into the ocean and opens out and gives itself, drowns in the ocean, now where's the ocean? Surrounding, containing. It's all there. Something like that happens. And there's a very interesting advice that the mother gives. First, someone asks, Mother, on what does receptivity depend? And first she goes to, it depends first of all upon sincerity, on whether one really wants to receive. And you recall the example I gave yesterday about something in me was shrinking from wanting to open out to this flow. And I can say, I'm trying, I'm sitting every day, I'm making all my efforts, but it's not happening. No, really, something within me was shrinking and pulling back, and I'm not even conscious of it. I fear. So the sincerity would be to really want to receive in all the parts of my being. Do you see how all of these go back to those first few principles? Then, she says, and then, yes, I believe the principal factors are sincerity and humility. Again, we discussed that yesterday. Why? With humility, you open out, you give yourself, and you'll see how this is important. She says, there is nothing that closes you up more than vanity. What does vanity do? I am already complete. I'm so great. You bind yourself in your narrowness. When you're self-satisfied, you have that kind of vanity of not wanting to admit that you lack something, that you make mistakes, that you're incomplete, that you're imperfect. There's something in the nature which grows stiff in this way, which does not want to admit. It is this which prevents you from receiving. You have, however, only to try it out and get the experience. If, by an effort of will, you manage to make even a very tiny part of the being admit that, well, yes, I'm mistaken, I should not be like that, and I should not do that, it was a mistake. If you manage to make it admit this, at first, as I said, it begins to hurt you very much, but when you hold it firmly until this is admitted, immediately it is open. It is open and strangely a flood of light enters, and then you feel so glad afterwards. So happy, you ask yourself, why was I foolish enough to resist for so long? And then the process by which you make this, the drawing in, she says, I'll read the whole thing because it's valuable in every way. She writes, my love is always with you. Remember, think of it in this way. The divine love, where is it? Towards whom is it? The whole cosmos. The divine pours himself to embrace the whole cosmos and draws it into it, including each one of us, including every cell of our body, everything. Nothing is left out. To each thing it is himself pouring entirely. Where is divine love? I feel so abandoned. What's wrong? Where's the gap? And she's explaining this. My love is always with you. If then you do not feel it, if you do not feel it, it is because you're not capable of receiving it. It's your receptivity that is lacking and should be increased. And what do you do for that? For this, you must open yourself. And one opens oneself only if one gives oneself. Interesting. You're in the chicken inside the shell. You can pour all the water you want on the shell, well, you're just closed in. Until it breaks out and opens the shell, how is it going to drink the water? So the need to open yourself. Surely, you are trying more or less consciously to draw the forces and the divine love towards you. That's the bowl reaching out to grab the ocean. The method is bad. Give yourself without calculation and without expecting anything in return. And then you will become capable of receiving. Give yourself, the bowl gives itself to the ocean, drowns into the ocean, and everything is there. So this is a skill again you can develop consciously. What's your relationship now? This shut up, opening out, with humility, gratitude. Remember the things we discussed yesterday, and you give yourself. And in this self-giving, you can experience this on many levels. In the mind, I open out to all knowledge, all light, all presence. In my heart, I open out to the all love, all energy, all power, all goodness. In the body, similarly, one can open out even to the energy or the light of the presence. And when you're able to do this, you will literally find yourself flooded with energy and light and strength. There's a practice which will be extremely valuable because for those of you who are engaged in work, the one thing you always need is more energy. What limits your capacity to have enough energy is this self-limiting I shell. The energy fills the whole universe. It's driving the whole universe. You can always draw from it if you break out or open out from this shell. And the method is very simple. You become conscious of the energy within you, conscious of the energy which is outside you. So there's an inside and an outside, and then there's the barrier separating the two. So you feel the energy outside you, and then consciously thin the barrier, or consciously draw in from outside into the inside. There are many variations you can play with this, but as soon as you become conscious of what is inside and outside, you can form a link and draw. And you'll find very quickly you can recharge and regenerate the energy within you. If you open too much, you might find yourself flooded, unable to contain. That's also a problem, and you must learn to be able to modulate. You'll see there are people who are able to go on, and they have so much energy, people are rushing to keep up with them. Or in their presence, you receive so much energy that you feed on them, so to say. To be an effective leader, to be an effective boss in your workspace, you have to give energy to people. Very few you will find who already have enough to keep going, and they are very precious. They quickly move up the ladder because now they can give to others also. And it doesn't always have to be your energy that you give. You walk into a space as someone who's responsible, simply making the contact with each person, greet them, just ask how are things going, what's happening, all well. And you move on, you walk through. That point of contact that you gave, briefly they open to you, you open to them, and there's an exchange of goodwill. And there's an energy transmitted, an ideal, a feeling, a goodness transmitted. All of that works. Gives them the boost they need. And the work is done perhaps. Why? Because you contain in yourself the ideal, the larger purpose, and that momentary contact, something of that touches, and with it, the widening and the energy flow which follows. The receptivity, and we're speaking generally, is not just to energy, but to the inspiration, to the ideal, to the larger goal that unites us. And it rethreads, draws together the team. One of the things which happens, especially when a team is in trouble, a company is in trouble, you will experience it's as if breaking apart from the edges. It's falling apart, so to say. The thread which holds it all together is missing or is weakened. And you, as the leader, are the thread, or at least are responsible for weaving or holding or gathering the thread. You go around and meet people, reconnect. So I'll just give an example. This was a person, family, friend, distant. Their business was failing, everything had fallen. There were many reasons, economic and otherwise. And he was clear he had to downsize, but he didn't know what to chop off. He had personal relations with everything. The advice which I gave him was, I first asked him, how often do you actually go into your premises of the factory and the other spaces? He says, no, I'm just sitting at my head office. I said, no way. You go physically on each location. Make sure you walk around the entire perimeter, every room, meet everybody that's part of your company, business, team, whatever level. Just walk around. And when you complete that process, you will feel what parts need to be dropped, which part needs to be integrated or strengthened. You will know, you will feel. But for that, you must actually extend your consciousness, widening and embracing, including in yourself the entire space. And it's so effective. But in this, you are opening out to receive, and all the rest begins to happen. And what can you receive? Everything. Because everything flows from the source. Everything that exists in the universe, including knowledge, power, strength, goodwill, love, happiness, joy, peace, light, strength, anything. Everything is powers of the divine flowing. Any of these you can receive, contain, and flow and spread. So, receptivity, the Mother summarizes in this way: the power to receive the divine force and feel its presence and the presence of the Mother in it and allow it to work, guiding one's sight and will and action. It's a very comprehensive, pithy summary of the whole thing. Sight, will, action. All these are filled with and led by this. The next, which makes for effective realization and completeness of our potential and action and work. She describes this word, progress. Now, obviously we're progressing when we're making effort, right? No, progress has a very specific sense. It's not just growth. We're growing. My company grew in profits. Did it progress? No, that's a very different story. You can easily grow in profits if you just cut off all the unnecessary expenditure. This is what World Bank does when it takes over a country. First they push you into debt, and then they get into it and make these restructuring. And the first thing they do, they cut off wasteful expenditure. You don't spend too much on social welfare, education. All of that is not profitable. What do you spend on? Well, you have to put investments in these, sell more of your assets, sell more of your forests and your etc. Immediately profit boosts up. 10 years down the line, you are in greater poverty. Why? Because what you did actually was a reversal of the forward movement of evolution. There was no real lasting growth. It was not a long-term vision. There was no progress. Progress is an increase in everything, not just wealth, in the whole richness of the experience, the richness of the consciousness, the deeper integration of all things, harmony increasing. Fourfold: knowledge, power, harmony, and detailed resources and form and perfection of it. Everything has to grow. Progress, therefore, we see not merely as growth. Sometimes you set aside growth for progress. So here the mother puts it this way: one has always something to learn and a progress to make, and in each circumstance one can find the occasion of learning the lesson and making the progress. Now here clearly she aligns it to the sense of learning and growing in consciousness. Remember what we said, interesting equals growth, progress. The first condition for inner progress is to recognize whatever is or has been a wrong movement in any part of the nature, wrong idea, wrong feeling, wrong speech, wrong action. What is wrong? She defines it. By wrong is meant what departs from the truth, from the higher consciousness, from the higher self, from the way of the divine. You'll say, well, what is that to do with my workspace? Where is higher consciousness and divine in workspace? Remember what we spoke of earlier, of what comes from the deeper aspiration. Everything which aligns with the deeper aspiration is in line with the divine will also. And anything which goes contrary to it or diverts from it is misaligning from an innate, real, lasting, objective even, truth. We have this idea in the Veda, ritam, and the word literally means, the word represents truth in movement, in action. When that which is true, which is innately, essentially real and true, moves to express itself, the way it flows out. We may use the image of water. When water flows, streaming in a laminar flow, every part, every thread, every molecule is moving parallelly in perfect harmony with every other. The opposite of this would be water which is gushing, bouncing, flowing, breaking, and chaos generally. And there the truth is broken up. It's the crooked way. It's always there, but fragmented. It comes back into line and it flows in a laminar way. And it's something of this idea here. Whatever is misaligned in you needs to be set right. Now when we look at ourselves as a personality, we have so many impulses, tendencies in us, which make us, as we said yesterday, jealous, angry, petty, narrow. All of these have within them this essential truth, misaligned, misdirected, narrowed somehow, cut off somehow. Bring them back, realign, redirect, widen, put back into harmony, and it becomes the laminar flow. It becomes no more an error, but now positive strength and power. So if you think of yourself as this half-formed, half-developed human engine, there's nothing fundamentally wrong. There is only things practically misaligned and out of order. Put them back in order. In your room, when you enter and it is chaotic and everything is lost because you can't find it, You can't say it's wrong. Essentially, everything is there, but it's misaligned, misplaced, out of harmony. And what you're doing is rearranging. And increasingly, as this rearrangement takes place, things align themselves to the movement of the manifesting will of the divine forward movement. It's behind this a deep idea that from the divine, as all possibilities flow, this is the forward movement of time. It is a power that is always moving forward, always growing. Put another way, the universe is always progressing. If you stop or if you misalign yourself from it, you feel left out or you fall back. You become obsolete. You serve no purpose anymore. If you stay aligned with it, you're carried by that forward flow, like the surfer. And so here's the interesting idea. When you stop growing, you cease to progress, you automatically fall back because the universe is moving forward. And this is the sense of the forward movement of the rhythm. When you're misaligned, you fall back. You put yourself back in alignment and you're carried and you become relevant again. What it means practically is at each moment as the universe moves forward, you have to let go of what you were and realign yourself to the new balance in the universe. Of course, you can't do that at each moment. I have to do it perhaps every morning when I wake up. Okay? Meanwhile, during the day, the universe has moved forward 24 hours. So next morning, I have to catch up that much. That's doable. Okay, I can't even do it every day because I'm too busy. On weekends, I can realign myself. Okay, whatever the pace, whatever the rhythm you set, eventually you realize if you don't grow, if you don't change, you fall out of sync. Which often happens when people retire. You see, the error of the life values set for us is this. You work very hard, struggle to do things you hate to do, to earn enough money that you can save so that after you've earned enough, you will do the things you actually like to do when you retire. But then you don't have the energy to do it, and the idea of retirement is what? You stop doing anything which grows. You're generally so fixed and so exhausted with life that you can't even make the effort to realign yourself. So in the ashram, we don't have the concept of retirement. Everybody works. And you change your work to match your current alignment. Your body has aged a little bit and so it's unable to give the same kind of energetic push, work the same hours or do the same skills. Fine, you just shift your work and now you're in right alignment with the current flow. Right? And you continue as long as you can. Because there's always something new to learn, to do, and to fulfill your role in the current alignment of the universe flow. So we have people working into the 90s, and they're happy because they're doing something meaningful and growing. So we remove this concept of retirement, this concept of stopping and saying, now I am satisfied, and I don't need to do anything more. Instead, you always say transitions. From one phase, I move to a new phase, adjusting. So in practice, it becomes like this. Every day you realign yourself, if you can't do every moment. And then every few years, when you realize certain things you couldn't realign are now badly out of sync, well, you make the major realignments. One of the things I tell my mother, she's now 77. She's still trying to do things the way she did 10 years ago. Keep at it, at the work. And I said, no, you have to slow down. Why? And I shouldn't slow down. I should be able to be what I was. No. Your body is unable to keep up with the pace of your mind. Your mind feels young as it was, but your body is unable to keep pace. Now you can drag your body, and people do that. Eventually the body breaks down because you don't give it time to regenerate. Instead, you respect. This is the new balance. My biology is now adjusted, modified to this degree, and I have to adjust my mind to match it. And where needed, I should be able to nudge and push it also beyond its limits, but not all the time, not drag it until it breaks down. And then it gives good service. It can do so much more. You shift your primary focus of work from the physical lifting and pushing of things which your body cannot sustain to the emotional support or the thought support or holding and containing an ideal. Now, we had people in the ashram who were so aged they could not do much. But if in their consciousness they were able to contain and hold the presence, there's still points of radiation for constant help to others. And that's work. That's their contribution and service to humanity. It just shifts to a level where you can. And perhaps that is often more valuable. But you never stop. And you never stop growing. So Mother puts it this way: the purpose of earthly life is progress. If you stop progressing, you will die. What is death? Shedding the part which cannot progress. You see, the body couldn't keep up beyond a point, plop, you drop it, take a new body so that you can continue with your new machinery. It's like your car has stopped working, your engine's broken down, you can't fix it, fine, we'll switch cars. Your clothes are torn, they're too small for you. When you've grown, now you've reached teenage, my clothes are too small, I shed them, take on new clothes. But you would never stop, you continue. Where you stop, the part that stops dies, is obsolete. Every moment that you spend without progressing is one step closer to your grave. From the moment you're satisfied and aspire no longer, you begin to die. Life is movement. Life is effort. It's not always physical, but it is this effort to grow. It is marching forward, climbing towards future realizations and revelations. Nothing is more dangerous than wanting to rest. Now I'm satisfied, now I'm retired, I'm resting. I don't do anything which involves growth. Okay. Now the essence of progress, now this is how she puts it, and we'll pause with this idea. Progress, to be ready at every minute to give up all one is and all one has in order to advance on the way. Two aspects you give up. All one is, all one has, in order to advance on the way. Now you'll see this is not only an internal subjective poise one has to develop, ready to give up everything you have and you are. I'm used to thinking this way. That thinking form is obsolete. I should be willing to give it up and reshape my thinking as necessary. But in a work, in a project, you have this happening all the time. When you're working, circumstances have changed because the universe has moved forward. You can't say, but my original project design required me to stick to this. You have to now adapt to the new circumstances. The market has shifted. The government rules have shifted. The interests of people have shifted, and you have to readapt. If you look back, take the example of Microsoft, which we discussed yesterday. It was at one point the leader, and then gradually it slid back until it almost collapsed as a company. And it had to be rebuilt. There are two phases this happened. The first time it happened was under Bill Gates, around I believe 97, 98. The internet had come in, and Microsoft in all its products had nothing integrated with the net. And I remember reading at that time an article about how Bill Gates went from department to department, met with each one, and exhorted them now to build integrated with the net products. And after doing that whole circle across weeks and months, he came back and collapsed in exhaustion. That's the kind of energy he had to pump into this shift. Why? Because the system he had built up, which was relevant for what was 5 years ago, had stopped progressing. Unable to let go of its past rhythms and habits, it had become obsolete. It had to be literally rebuilt from scratch while being in the same space with the same people. How much can you push? How much can you change? The second time it happened was more recently, 5 years ago, when again it had to reinvent itself. It's literally rebuilding from scratch the whole thing. And to the extent you're able to do it, you're relevant. To the extent you're unable to do, you're still lagging irrelevancy and dying in the past. And so Equally, as for us individually as in our workspace, there is this constant recasting ourselves to progress. Now, one of the forms in which I would recommend this process to happen is in your relationships with people. All of us have this enormous baggage of people we like and don't like. Ideas that we are fixated with, this is good, that is bad. And they're just habits. You built up 20 years ago. That guy insulted me 20 years ago, insulted my great-grandfather. You go to Afghanistan, you have still tribes fighting each other because their great-grandfather insulted each other. And you have always a justification. But your father insulted my father. Oh, that's because your father insulted mine, and he gave it back to him 20 years ago. And so now today I have to give it back to you. And my son will insult his... Oh, come on, how long does it go on? If you think about it, it makes so little sense. That's where we are, even in our lives here. Except it's not spanning generations, it's spanning years. Pick the person you hate most. Pick the person in your family that you have not spoken to for so many years because of something that happened. You still need to be like that. They have changed, you have changed, the world has changed. And to the extent that you're bound to that, that part of you is obsolete and preventing you from progress. So I often tell myself, the way I go through internally, psychologically as a process, I say, well, you know what? When he takes birth again in a new body, I take birth in a new body, we will meet, we won't remember this incident. That's how nature frees you from these attachments. But do I need to take birth again? Do I have to wait another whatever number of years to shed this body, take on another one, grow all over again, and then be friends? Or can I do it right now? Why not take birth right now? Let the I that is past die right now, and let me take birth again as a new person. And yes, you can do it. Now, it does not happen from moment to moment. She puts it actually here from minute to minute. It can happen over a few weeks. You can undergo a kind of an internal reshaping, recasting, reinventing, or redrawing out that which is within you, which is true. The truth within you that grows, that never stays still, let it come forward. Recast your outer forms, shed the past, body, mind, emotions. Shed them. Like a snake sheds its skin. It's a new snake, new person, new being. And all your relationships, let them just drop, rebuild, recast them with the love and goodwill which is intrinsic to you, which is you in your deepest aspiration. Right? In fact, when you begin to practice this, you will notice your progress speeds up so much. And sometimes it feels like the person I was 5 years ago is so alien to me. Wow, was I like that? That's not me. I'm a different person now. And that's a good sign. And when that gap becomes shorter and shorter, that's even better. And so progress is this constant forward movement of evolution itself, of the universe. And not only being in alignment with the universe, even a part of you may be looking ahead at what's coming and progressing. You see, when the mother started Auroville, those of you who are familiar, Auroville is this experimental prototype township for the future that the mother started at the age of 90, at the age of 90. Imagine starting a project that's going to take another 30, 40 years to develop with zero resources on property that is barren desert for an ideal township of the future where you can set the very framework of future townships as a model to inspire the rest of the world. And not just a model in which her disciples would sit and pray. No, it will be a model for human unity where people from all over the world would come with all their resources and with all the baggage and their mindsets and their differences of thinking, not just interests, and come together and work together as one humanity. What an extraordinarily forward-looking, impossible seeming ideal. Initiated at the age of 90. with zero money, by the way. And the power that she put into it was such, people at that point read in the newspaper, Orwell, this is what it is. Wow, this is where we have to go. And I know of people, families here in the USA, they sold off their houses with their kids, they just went to this barren desert land and said, okay, what do we do now? Where do we stay? And so the early houses were kit houses with coconut leaves as support for the roof and bamboo structures, starting with that. And a barren desert, people going around watering plants just so that they don't die. And interestingly, 10 years later, you have a beginning rainforest, which today is a full-fledged, practically rainforest, entire community. And typically around January and February, which is the coolest season, you have about 7,000 guests from all over the world. And the guests are more than the actual residents of Auroville. And what are they coming for? It's fascinating to explore. All across Auroville, there are programs, all kinds of things, from art, music, philosophy, discussions, workshops, of all kinds of things. One of the richest, most diverse focal points for exploration of new forms. And it's there right now. It's continuing. The push that she gave at that point is going on. But imagine at the age of 90, she's looking at the future and working to manifest it now. So part of us literally has to look out there ahead and work to prepare for it, even as we are working to remain in balance with the present forward movement of the evolutionary impulse. This is the sense of progress. And finally, the fourth power, aspect, attribute, necessary for this realization, courage. At the age of 90, to take that as a responsibility, what a courage, isn't it? Well, anything requires courage, because the thing you want to do does not exist right now. You're going to build a new hotel in a space which right now is maybe an old hotel that you have to demolish, or a barren spot where what are you going to do? It's courage. You're going to take up a project and you'll have the burden of it, its success or failure. And if you don't have that courage, you can't even begin. It's a leap you have to take. And so the courage within is built on the conviction of its reality and its inevitability and its success inherently. If you don't have that, how big is your courage? That's the scope of project you can take. Interesting. If your courage is small, you can plan for a small project. If your courage is large, you can plan for a large one. I have seen over time many successful businessmen, many of them, and the best, the most courageous of them, the ones who can do the most, achieve the maximum in the shortest time and effort, are the ones who have had the experience of losing everything. Having been through that experience of losing everything and then building from scratch, from zero, they know they can do whatever it takes, whatever it needs. The ones who have not had that experience, they've inherited a stable business. They're the ones who are unable to adapt because they don't have the courage to take the steps necessary for the next forward movement. They cling to what they know is safe space, fearing to make too many changes, and they are the ones who most rapidly become obsolete. And why? And this is the pattern you see across generations. One generation builds, another sustains for a while, and the third generation loses it. But they can't sustain. They don't have what it takes to make that breakthrough, that leap forward. The same thing you see in startups. The startup in the beginning is willing to take any risk because they have nothing to lose. They're starting with practically zero. Once they've got to a stable base, okay, we can't take that risk. This is too risky. Hold that back. We can only make incremental changes. And then over time, with small incremental changes, they fall back. They get swallowed up by something else, whatever form it takes. There's something else which is swallowing it up. Why did it need to swallow a startup? It had more resources to build its own new facility. They cannot. They are ossified. So they buy the startup as a way of adding to their ossified body a flexible arm, in a sense. You see? Courage. When you have nothing to lose, it's easy. When you have everything to lose, that's when it becomes difficult. So, Mother writes this, very interesting. I remember that once we spoke of courage as one of the perfections. That's what we're discussing now. But this courage means having a taste for the supreme adventure. And this taste for supreme adventure takes hold of you completely and flings you without calculation and without reserve and without a possibility of withdrawal into the great adventure of the divine discovery, the great adventure of the divine meeting, and yet greater adventure of the divine realization. You throw yourself into the adventure without looking back and without asking for a single minute, what's going to happen? For if you ask what is going to happen, you never start. You always remain stuck there, rooted to the spot, afraid to lose something, to lose your balance. In this context, when she is putting it, great adventure of the divine discovery, divine meeting, divine realization, perhaps it seems too abstract. But really, that's what we are doing in everything we do in life. Even if you're taking up a project, what is it that the project represents for you? A new possibility, a new discovery of the divine potential working out in the universe. It's one of your ways of contributing to the divine manifestation, to bring more beauty, to bring more knowledge, to bring more power, to bring greater harmony, comfort, happiness, beauty, love into the world. So don't view it purely as an abstract, internal, subjective experience, but as an objectified forward movement of the divine discovery, the divine meeting, the divine realization. In the picture you have of what you're doing, you can hold a narrow view. I'm working on a project to build a new hotel, which in 5 years will give me so much return and profit of so much after 10 years. Okay, good. You may still do it. Or I look at the big picture. I'm going to build a hotel here where over 5 years, 20,000 people will be passing through, whose lives will be made more comfortable, who will be enriched, who will go back happy having stayed here, and who will enjoy the stay so long, so much they will want to come back again and again. And I will have the satisfaction of having created a space on earth where so many people will benefit and grow. Now observe within yourself what's the kind of satisfaction, what's the kind of strength that this vision gives you, and the impulsion that it can sustain through difficulties. If you look at the bigger picture of what this serves in the larger divine manifestation, in the larger evolution of the earth and the universe, you look at this big picture, you have the strength needed, you have the courage necessary. You shrink your view to just that little piece and your immediate personal interest in it. I can't take a risk of investing so much and I'll scale it up. Let me start small and bit by bit we'll add to it. That's all I can contain in my courage. When you have this big vision, you realize it's not just you. You are only an instrument. There's a larger purpose which will work out through you. And long after I go, this will continue and others will continue it. It's not just me. You see how this vision goes? That's how the mother saw Auroville. She knew at the age of 90 she would probably leave her body within a few years. She was preparing for it. She was delegating responsibilities. And she's starting this project, puts into it the kind of energy and vision that will sustain it long after she's left her body. But the inspiration of it continues because it's not just through this body, mind that the inspiration comes, it comes from the source. And that continues. And so when we look at our role in this larger project and align ourselves to the larger source, that the divine needs this hotel to be a focal point for this large collective human growth. You don't need personal courage. You're just the instrument at that moment working, and the teams, the right people, resources, they will come. If we go with first sincerity, humility, gratitude, perseverance, aspiration, receptivity, progress, and courage, the certainty is there. So this covers the 4 attributes, powers, which make for this realization and execution most complete, effective of our highest potential in whatever we do. And the next 4 that we will see tomorrow will be relating this to the world. Review the 6 we have covered so far yesterday. Sincerity, humility, gratitude, perseverance, and then aspiration, receptivity, progress, courage.